Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends! Welcome back to our subreddit, Entitled People, where you'll hear stories about people who think they're above everyone else and believe they can do whatever they want. Let's talk about this lady right here. I know I've shared this story before about 100 episodes ago, but this is by far the most entitled thing I've ever seen in my life. This lady uses bread as knee pads when she's looking at other bread. It's so ridiculous that it's hilarious. Guys, I couldn't even imagine using bread as knee pads. Of course, she walks away, leaving the mushed bread behind. Incredible. The entitlement is absolutely incredible. If you think that's entitled, wait until you hear the stories we have today. The first story features a Karen telling a store manager how to price things. The second story involves Oppie's parents demanding access to her personal medical records to shame her. The third story is an email submission from a listener about a raging Karen in a bookstore. Fourth is about a Karen who damages a $55,000 wheelchair and doesn't care one bit. My friends, I hope you stay for these stories and hit that subscribe button for more in the future. Let's dive in! It finally happened. I witnessed my first Karen. My boyfriend and I went to the local mini-market to get some pizza dough. Thankfully, there wasn't much of a line, so we got in and waited our turn. Suddenly, we saw and heard this lady, henceforth known as Karen. Unfortunately, she didn't have the classic Karen haircut. She went off on this poor cashier girl complaining about a sandwich from the deli. I'm guessing she didn't know the price until it was rung up because we suddenly heard, $7? Are you kidding? My boyfriend and I looked at each other thinking, oh gosh, it's about to go down. Karen said, I want to see a manager, this is ridiculous. The cashier went and came back with a manager about 2 seconds later since it's a small store. I have to give credit to this guy, he didn't back down. Karen was complaining about the price of the sandwich, and the manager explained that the weight of the meat in the sandwich determined the price. She wasn't having it. Karen said, I can get it much cheaper at the deli down the street. In my head I was thinking, then why are you here, Karen? She continued, look, I'm still going to buy it, but look at this sandwich. There isn't much meat. There's no way it's $7. The manager told her, I'm sorry you don't like our prices, but that's how much it is based on the weight of the meat, cheese, and spread. Karen replied, that's far too high. Let me show you the sandwich. The manager warned, Miss, if you open the container, you have to buy it. Karen insisted, I'll still pay for it, but let me show you what I mean. So, Karen proceeded to open the container and show him the contents of the sandwich. She opened it and said, look at this. There are like 2 slices of meat in here. There's barely anything. You probably get this meat at bulk prices. And look at the cheese. It resembles processed sliced cheese. The manager responded, Ma'am, unfortunately, those are the prices we set. You either buy it or you don't. Now that you've opened the sandwich and had your fingers in it, you have to pay for it. Karen then declared, I am never coming here again, but do you see how this sandwich is not worth $7? The manager replied, I don't make the prices. I'm sorry, miss. He then rolled his eyes and left. This lady started berating the cashier, who had nothing to do with pricing, saying, would you pay for something like this? Look at it. My first job when I was 17 was as a cashier at a supermarket, so I immediately empathized with the girl. There's so much you want to say but can't because you have to keep that customer service smile to get your paycheck. Then I heard this ridiculousness. Karen said, what happened to the people who used to own this place? They would have never priced it like this. Greed is ruining everything. This sandwich is easily $4. Why even lie and price it at $7? The cashier was speechless and didn't know how to respond. Karen continued, I'm going to make a complaint. This is ridiculous. $7 for a tiny sandwich. I've been to this store many times. The sandwiches aren't big, but there's a decent amount of meat in them, depending on the type of sandwich you get. At this point, my boyfriend and I had had enough. We didn't want to make a scene, and I'm not great with confrontation. We paid and headed to the exit, which was right where Karen and the cashier were. Just before we left, I shouted, Bye, Karen! Karen turned her head to look at me with bewildered eyes. I walked off, and my boyfriend gave her an annoyed, disapproving look. It may have been a bit cowardly, but I'm still kind of proud of it, especially when I heard one of the cashiers laugh. My boyfriend and I laughed all the way back to the car. I don't know what happened after we left, but from the look on that lady's face, I think she realized how she looked. My friends, leave it to an entitled Karen to dictate how things should be priced, right? I'm so surprised she didn't say it should have been free at that point. The fact that she opened the sandwich to show the contents and justify the pricing was absolutely absurd. If you don't like the price, don't pay for it. Simple as that. There was no point in her opening the sandwich and making a scene about it. Let's hope she never sets foot in those fancy restaurants where they charge $100 for a bite of food. I think her head would explode at that point. Next story. In healthcare, one of the most difficult things to deal with is family members of patients. They are understandably angry, upset, grieving, devastated, and often feel helpless. Most of the time, I try to understand this and not get too annoyed when a family causes problems, but these parents were on another level. One of my patients was an 18-year-old woman who had a pelvic infection. She got very sick and required a moderate stay in the hospital. She was a dream patient, though, open, honest, and generally a loving person. Her parents were none of those things. Every day they would come in and start demanding this, that, or the other thing from the nurses. They wanted an extra bed in the room so the mother could stay overnight. Honestly, it's COVID times, and you're lucky to even be allowed to visit. They were rude to the student nurse who was doing their daughter's observations, to the point that the charge nurse moved the student to a different set of patients to get her away from them. But when the doctors were around, they were the sweetest people you've ever met, right up until we were out of sight. They were disruptive, loud, and generally obnoxious people. Thankfully, their daughter was aware of their behavior, and had informed us that she didn't want them to be told anything about her condition unless she approved it. She was a legal adult, so she was entitled to her privacy. This wasn't a huge issue to begin with, as she shared most of the details with them. But then her mother Googled pelvic infections and discovered that, oh my gosh, sometimes they can be caused by sexually transmitted infections. Cue the dramatic music. As far as she was concerned, we had messed up and gotten the diagnosis wrong because there was no way her little angel had even thought of having sex. At this point, they demanded to see their daughter's medical records so they could prove we were lying about the infection. Politely telling them to buzz off was the highlight of my week. Unfortunately, that wasn't the end of it. They came in the next day with legal papers, saying they would try to sue to demand we hand over the medical records. It turns out they had lied to the lawyer because the papers were for minors still under the guardianship of their parents, not a grown woman. They then threatened to sue each of us individually. It gets even worse. They tried to get some questionable doctor in to check her hymen. Thankfully, the daughter screamed bloody murder when the guy tried to examine her, which resulted in me getting to watch security escort a lot of them off the premises. I honestly hope she presses charges for that, guys. What an insane story. You would think a doctor would know better than to go against the patient's wishes to the point where the girl had to scream for him to stop. I can't even believe that OP said the guy tried to examine her. Are you guys getting some sort of creepy doctor vibes here? I really hope the girl is doing okay, though. There's no telling what those parents will try once she's away from the hospital and back at home. Next story. This happened back when the Twilight books were wrapping up. I was a 21-year-old college guy working full-time and attending school full-time. Needless to say, my life revolved around books. My store wanted to have a big party for the midnight release of the final book. Our manager, who always wore polos and khakis, pulled us into a meeting and said, "We're having a prom-themed party. I want everybody to wear their best." Recently, my uncle had bought me a 3-piece suit for interviews, so I was excited to wear it, along with my Lord of the Rings-themed tie. On the night of the party, we started letting people in at 10 o'clock to enjoy trivia, games, and to get in line. Our store had a voucher system. Any time in the month before the release, you could buy a voucher and turn it in to get the book after the release. We started lining up people around 11 o'clock. Our manager called me over and said, "OP, go grab the racks of books and bring them to the counters." I ran to the back and started pushing out those large rolling racks of books to the front. Here's some important information. If a book was sold before the release date, our company would charge our store for 10 copies and revoke our voucher system. On my 5th or 6th trip to the front, I heard, "Excuse me." I turned to see a woman and her very obviously pregnant daughter. She walked up to me out of the line and said, "Hey, my daughter's pregnant and feels bad. Could we pick up the book now?" "I have a voucher." I explained the company's policy and the punishment for not following it. She huffed and said, "My daughter can't stand for another hour." I told her, "Well, ma'am, I can get a chair from the cafe." She replied, "No, I want that book." She reached for the book, and I pushed the cart out of her reach. I'm a 6'5" guy, so it rolled a bit further than I intended. Fast forward to about 30 minutes until midnight. A friend in line yelled, "OP, call an ambulance." My manager and I ran back with our portable phone. The daughter's water had broken. Luckily, we were close to the local hospital, so they were there in 5 minutes. The Karen mom met me at the door before she left and snarled, "Can I have the darned book now, you fool?" About 5 minutes until midnight, I heard complaining. My manager, who was setting up the system, motioned for me to see what was wrong. I ran up, and the Karen was back. She had left her grandchild's birth for a teen romance novel and demanded her place in line. I explained that leaving the property forfeited her place in line, and she had to go to the back, which was now outside. She complained and yelled for a few moments before going to the back. Finally, midnight came and went. We scanned the vouchers and handed out the books. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, I looked up and saw Karen. There were 6 registers, so I thought there were good odds I wouldn't get her, but no luck. She waited and came to my counter, slamming the voucher down. She demanded, "Give me my book now." I scanned it, handed it to her, and she walked off. I called out, "Ma'am, would you like the voucher as a bookmark?" She gave me a rude gesture. As much as I wish that was the end, it wasn't. The next morning, we learned that a lot of the books had double print errors, making several pages unreadable. The next afternoon, I came in wearing my usual band tee and blue jeans. I heard my manager talking, saying, "I'm sorry, ma'am, I'm the only night manager and I don't remember you." Then I heard the familiar voice. She said no, he was a tall, dark-haired kid. I came around the aisle and saw Karen. She pointed at me and said, "Him." At this point, my patience with her had ended, and my sarcasm had reached its peak. I said, "Miss, how's the grandbaby enjoying the book?" She lost it. My manager shook his head and said, "That's OP, the cashier." She replied, "No, last night he was wearing a suit. He was pretending to be a manager. He told me all these rules." She recited what I had mentioned earlier, and the manager said, "Well, ma'am, that's all correct." She then demanded a corporate number. My manager, who had my back, motioned to me and said, "OP, clock in and get her the number." I walked to the front with her behind me, and she said, "I'm going to get you fired. You'd better start job hunting, you smart aleck punk." I got to the front and gave her the number. She huffed and said, "Nothing to say?" I looked her in the eyes, clasped my hands together, and in the most desperate voice said, "Please, please call corporate and tell them I'm doing my job properly and abiding by store rules. I desperately need a raise." I never heard back from that, but I gained the nickname Wildman from a few coworkers and management for my sarcastic responses that morning. Thank you so much for your submission, Daniel. I love your personality, my man. Fighting Karens with quick wit, sarcasm, and a sprinkle of humor. You sound just like me, minus the quick wit. My friends, if you're listening and want to share stories, my email is in the description box. Next story. Dear Entitled Mother, thank you so much for your complete and utter lack of patience when getting on the bus, which resulted in breaking part of my $55,000 wheelchair and me needing to call the police for help. I was on the bus tonight, heading to a workshop I was fairly excited for. Things were great until, slightly before my stop, 2 adults got on, one with a toddler and the other wheeling a stroller. It's strict corporate policy that all strollers must be folded before being brought onto the bus, but not enough drivers enforce it. This was one of those monster Cadillac strollers, to boot. She brought her unfolded stroller onto the bus, and seeing the front entirely occupied by disabled people, including myself, decided to push past toward the back. Her behemoth of a stroller wouldn't fit in the space available, and she started ramming it along my wheelchair to plow through. I shouted, "Hey, watch it!" She ignored me and kept trying to squeeze through. I said, "Careful, I can feel you tugging at stuff." The entitled woman didn't stop and finally managed to push through and move to the back. I fumed for the next few blocks, pushed the button for my stop, and turned on my wheelchair. Then I got an error that said left brake disconnected. I tried again, and the error repeated. I thought, oh my gosh. The next several minutes were spent with the bus pulled over, passengers getting mad at me for causing a delay while I panicked, trying to figure out how to get off the bus. Finally, a guy flipped my electric release switch on and off several times, which convinced my chair to work long enough for me to get off the bus and about 15 feet away before it suddenly turned itself off. I turned it back on, and nothing happened. It started throwing up a charger inhibit error, which is the error you get when you try to move while still plugged into a wall outlet. The next hour was a progression of events that saw me sitting on the ground with the back of my chair opened up as I went through everything, trying to figure out what in the world was going on. I even called the police because I wasn't sure how I'd get home, as my wheelchair company doesn't have after-hours service. In the end, I discovered that 2 different things had gotten disconnected. When I fixed them, my chair started up just fine. The lovely officer helped me get my chair cover back on, and more importantly, helped me get safely back into my chair. None of this would have happened if that entitled mother had taken 1 darn second to fold her stroller or, I don't know, stopped when I asked her to. But no, she was far too important to do such a basic task. Yes, my wheelchair is actually $55,000. I know that sounds like a lot, but given that, according to the order form I just looked at, a joystick cover alone is $85, it doesn't surprise me at all. It has 3 different tilt and adjustment settings, which drives the cost up enormously. I love shouting at people who drive too close to me that my wheelchair costs more than their car. My friends, I had no idea that wheelchairs could get that high in price. What a careless lady, though. She probably just sat there, clueless about why the bus wasn't moving and unaware that she was the cause of it. Next story. I'm a regular at Ulta, basically on a first-name basis at this point. The employees all say hi to me when I come in. One of them started talking to me, asking how school is going and so on, when I got this weird feeling of being watched. Behind the employee was a lady who looked like a typical Karen, just staring at us. I whispered to the employee that the lady behind her might need some help, so I stepped out of the way. Karen began talking and said, "So, I'm looking for a—" She paused, looked me up and down, and then said, "You are filthy. Have some pride in your appearance when you work." I told her, "I know, I forgot my apron, and it's one of those days. Good thing I don't work here." Karen responded, "Excuse me? Where's your manager? How did you even come to work like this? It's one thing to look like an absolute slob in the workplace, but it's another to lie to a customer's face to get out of trouble. I spend hundreds in this store, you know." I explained, "This is my uniform for beauty college. We're required to wear all black. I'm training to be a nail tech, hence I'm covered in neon powders. I'm sure you can smell the monomer on my clothes." Karen then said, "I heard everybody say hello to you by your first name. How else would they know you unless you worked here?" I replied, "Because I shop here a lot, and my name pops up when I put in my Ulta card." Karen snapped, "Where's your manager? I'm done with your poor customer service and sarcasm." I thought, oh my gosh, and reached into my tote bag to pull out my badge lanyard. I showed it to her, covering the company name with my thumb, of course. I said, "This is my actual job, ma'am." She looked at the badge, which had my face, my name, and, in very large letters at the bottom, Pharmacy Assistant Client Relations. Important note, this position is the lowest on the pharmacy totem pole, lower than a pharmacy technician. Karen responded, "Well, you don't need to be rude about it. And who gives up a job as a pharmacist to be a nail technician? You need to reevaluate your life. Your parents must be so disappointed. I'm sure they thought they raised someone smart. My son is at an Ivy League school studying to be a pharmacist, and he would not be welcome in my house if he made such an idiotic decision to throw his life away like that and do nails." At this point, I just looked at her and said, "Oh, well, my sister got accepted to that school and specifically chose a different Ivy League school because the one your son goes to has never had a pharmacy program, ever." Apparently, this set her off. I can't even remember what she said at this point because she went ballistic, screaming every insult in the book and calling me a liar. The poor employee I'd been talking to hadn't made a peep, and the manager and a security guard came over to see what all the commotion was about. I'm pretty sure I watched the manager die a little inside when she saw who was making a scene. She quickly started ushering Karen in the other direction. I said to the employee, "Is she always like this?" The employee replied, "Yeah, she comes in like once a week and always goes crazy because of some coupon or pricing issue." She apologized, and I told her, "No worries, it's best not to provoke her. After all, her son is so special he's getting a pharmacy degree from a school that doesn't even offer it." Wow, I love how the original poster called her out on that lie about her son studying pharmacy at a school that doesn't even offer it. That was really uncalled for, though. There was no need to talk down to the original poster about her life choices. All that matters is that you do what makes you happy. Entitled people care too much about prestige. If the original poster wants to do nails, go do nails. Leave pharmacy to someone else. I love this comment here. It sounds to me like her own son is lying to her about what he's doing because he's ashamed of her. I'm sorry to all the children who've ever had to deal with this kind of horrible parent. Next story. This happened about a year and a half ago while I was hanging out at my cousin's house. My cousin's birthday had recently passed, meaning she had a decent amount of money that our entire family had given her. In our family, it's common to give relatives money and a card once we pass the age of 12. Full-on gifts aren't really given much anymore. Anyway, my aunt stopped going to work because she claimed to have medical issues. What were those medical issues? Oh, she was just struggling with alcoholism, that's all. This meant she didn't have a lot of money to spend. So, of course, she did the only logical thing a terrible parent would do. My cousin and I were sitting in her room playing video games when we heard her mom shouting at her. She said, "Casey, come here." Casey told her, "Hang on, me and the original poster are finishing our game." My aunt stormed into my cousin's bedroom, clearly a bit intoxicated, and said, "I told you to get out here." That wasn't a request, that was an order. My cousin replied, "I'm sorry, we can't just pause the game." Of course I was trying to stay quiet as it's not my business when my aunt and cousin argue. My aunt then said, "Where's your birthday money? The money everybody gave you during your birthday party." My cousin asked, "Why?" She replied, "I need some." "But why do you need my money?" My cousin asked. I remember my aunt getting mad and saying, "Casey, where's the money? I'm not asking again. Tell me where it is right now." My cousin told her, "I'll tell you where it is when you tell me why you need it." My aunt snapped, "It's none of your concern what I need the money for." My cousin responded, "It's my money. I deserve to know what you're buying with it." She said, "Fine, I need some darn cigarettes and beer. Happy?" My cousin went on to tell her that she wasn't giving her money to buy cigarettes. My aunt lost it and said, "Casey, I'm your mother. Your money is my money. Now where is it?" My cousin still wasn't paying attention to her, but I could clearly tell she was nervous. My aunt never hesitated to give her a smack as punishment. She said, "Mom, it's mine. It's my birthday money, and I'm not giving it to you." This infuriated my aunt to no end. She walked over to my cousin, got right in her face and slapped her, not super hard, but my cousin cried out in pain. I remember being so terrified in that moment. My aunt said, "Now, where the heck is your birthday money?" My cousin continued to refuse to tell her. She knew her mom would take it if she knew where it was. Casey said, "I'm not giving it to you. It's my money for my birthday." My aunt shouted, "Who the heck do you think you're yelling at? This is my house. As long as you live in my house, all the money in it is mine too." She then slapped my cousin again. My cousin got off the floor and ran to the bathroom. I was just sitting there, silent the entire time. I just wanted to play some Call of Duty with my cousin. I didn't know what to do, it was so scary. My aunt didn't even acknowledge my existence. Instead, she stormed out of my cousin's room and went to shake the money out of my younger cousin's piggy bank. She took his money and went to the store to get cigarettes. There's no real happy ending here. There's no instant karma for my aunt, and unfortunately she did get her cigarettes, and my cousin ended up with 2 pretty decent smacks. Yeah, my aunt's a piece of work, but don't worry, karma eventually caught up to her. We can save that story for another time. A lot of people in the comments section are saying to report the mother to Child Protective Services. What a terrifying situation to be in. I feel so bad for the original poster's cousins, having to deal with that mom on a regular basis. I would never think of taking money from an 8-year-old, let alone for smokes or beer. That part where she pulled the, "You live in my house, so all your money belongs to me," is absolutely ridiculous. I read a similar story a while back where the original poster's parents took her hard-earned money to buy designer clothing and pulled the same stunt, "You live in this house, you should help us out by buying us nice clothes." Come on, parents. That's not how it works. Next story. About 2 years ago, I worked as a hostess at a family-style tap house during the summer months. The location was downtown, near the mall and a few of my friends' houses. I would often change clothes after work and walk downtown. Sometimes I was sent home early because it wasn't busy, and today was one of those days. I threw on some jean shorts and a tube top with a light flannel that I packed in case I was let out early enough to hang with friends. Some of my friends were hanging out a few blocks away at a comic book shop, close enough that I could walk. After signing out, I said goodbye to my coworkers and set off. The tube top didn't show much of my chest, but enough to reveal that I had a fair amount of scars. My chest also caused them to warp a bit, making them more noticeable. I didn't care, and by this time, I was rather proud of them. When people asked about them, I was able to explain what happened, and felt like a normal person. In an earlier post on the subreddit, I explained that I have a lot of scars all over my chest area, the biggest one looking like an upside-down cross in the middle of my chest, close to my stomach. This was due to congenital heart disease and congenital diaphragmatic hernias. I needed surgeries when I was little to fix it. As I was walking downtown, I got a text from one of my friends at the comic book shop saying I should definitely bring them some food and they'd pay me back. It was standard lazy teen stuff, so I agreed and went to the nearest convenience store on the way. I walked in, went to the snack food aisle and started picking out chips, soda, and such. As I headed down the candy section, a family of 3 walked in, a mom, a dad, and a little kid who was about 6 years old. I heard the kid crying about something, but other than that, I didn't pay much attention to them. I was picking out candy to give to my friends because I was feeling generous. I was getting paid that weekend and wanted to be nice. I squatted to look at other candies when the little kid came waddling down the aisle, looking at the sweets. He ran up to me, laughing, and put his hand out for the candy I was holding. I gave it to him, knowing I could just get another. He was really happy, then noticed the scars on my upper chest and pointed in a curious way. I adjusted my tube top a bit, just in case, and the kid asked, "What's that on your chest?" I smiled and told him I was sick, but now I'm all better. It was what I told kids who probably wouldn't understand medical jargon. The kid seemed satisfied with that response and ran off with the candy I gave him. I got my candy and went to the checkout to pay. I had my stuff on the counter when I glanced and saw the little kid talking with his parents near the store's entrance. At first I thought the mom was going to be mad about the candy, but she didn't seem to care, so I thought I was all good. Then the mom and dad started to look concerned, and then angry. I had no idea what the kid was saying. The dad whipped his head around to look at me, and I had no clue what was going on. The kid pointed to his chest, and my heart dropped into my stomach. The parents looked ticked off, and the dad was staring daggers at me. I pretended not to notice, but I could tell they were looking at my chest. I was used to the feeling, and it didn't bother me as much, but I knew something was about to happen. Sure enough, as I collected my bags, I felt a sharp tap on my shoulder. I turned around to find both the mom and dad looking at me with irritated expressions, which immediately put me on the defensive. I didn't say anything, I just looked at them, waiting for whatever was coming. This, apparently, wasn't a good idea. The mom slowly looked down at my chest and then back to my face. I let her look. I was used to looks like this, and didn't care at this point. The mom didn't like that and said, "So, you think it's cool promoting this kind of lifestyle?" I'll admit, that threw me for a loop. Not really knowing how to respond, I said, "Sorry, what?" The dad then said, "You know darn well what. People like you are going to a bad place. The fact that you think it's okay to tell kids about this is so disturbing." I was honestly hurt and had no idea why I was even hurt. I knew they were talking about my scars, but I didn't know why they were so offended. I hesitantly asked, "Are you talking about my surgical scars?" This caused the dad to look like he was having a stroke. He got up close to my face and said, "You think I look like an idiot, don't you? Quit spreading your weird propaganda nonsense around my son." I quickly stepped back as he said this, and realization clicked. They thought my scars were a cult thing. Oh my gosh. I realized the scar looked like an upside-down cross. For some reason, I had the urge to play along and laugh, but I kindly explained that they were from heart problems in the past and tried to give them a summary of my medical history. They didn't believe me, and this only made them angrier. The mom started spouting off about lying and being disrespectful. At this point, I was really irritated for being yelled at and told them I was going to leave and that they were seriously mistaken. The dad then told me he was going to call the police for harassment and endangerment to his son. I really didn't want that, so I took out the card I carried in case paramedics found me, which listed my medical conditions, and showed it to the parents. They looked at it for maybe 4 seconds and then went quiet. The mother looked embarrassed and turned red, but the dad didn't look convinced. He said I was lying, that medicine wouldn't leave anybody looking so messed up and ugly, and that I needed to leave before I caused any more damage to his family. I told him, in the most mock customer service voice I could muster, "I'm sorry that my medical history inconvenienced you." Then I walked out the door, but not before the dad yelled curses, called me a witch, and said I was going to a bad place. I walked with my jacket off the rest of the way to the comic shop, and my friends and I still laugh about it sometimes. In situations like this, you've got to learn to laugh it off. I feel like the dad didn't want to admit fault and just doubled down on the whole weird propaganda thing, ending up looking super foolish. Entitled people are wild, guys. Sometimes I read these stories and think, no way in heck this can ever happen. Then I get comments from you all below saying stuff like, "This definitely happens. I'm just glad I've never run into any crazy entitled people myself." Wow, what a wild ride through Karen land and entitled parent territory. These stories are like a masterclass in dealing with people who think the world revolves around them. Let's break it down with some quick thoughts on each. Alright, I'll ditch the numbering for the breakdown and just dive into each story with a quick take, keeping the vibe snappy and the sarcasm dialed up. Here's the revised rundown of those entitled Karen and Parent sagas. Mini Market Karen, opening a sandwich to whine about its price while harassing a cashier? That's Karen 101. "Your buy, Karen," as you strutted out, was pure gold. Bet her face was redder than the deli meat. Next time, maybe slip the cashier a high five for surviving that nonsense. Hospital horror parents, these folks demanding medical records and sneaking in a creepy doctor, are on a whole other level of unhinged. The daughter's a champ for setting boundaries. Hope she's thriving far away from them now. Your buzz-off moment must have felt like sweet, sweet justice. Twilight Karen ditching her daughter in labor for a Twilight book? That's a plot twist even M. Night Shyamalan couldn't dream up. Your sarcastic "please tell corporate I'm doing my job" was a mic drop moment. Wildman nickname earned, no question. Wheelchair wrecker ramming a $55,000 wheelchair with a monster stroller? This lady's entitlement could power a small city. Glad you got your chair fixed, but she needs a crash course in basic human decency. Maybe yell "that's more expensive than your car" next time. Ulta Karen mistaking you for an employee and trashing your life choices? Textbook Karen energy. Your comeback about her son's non-existent pharmacy degree was a verbal knockout. Keep rocking the nail tech life sounds way cooler than her Ivy League fantasies. Auntie entitlement stealing a kid's birthday cash for smokes and beer is low, even for a soap opera villain. Poor Casey dealing with that mess. Can't wait to hear about the karma that caught up with your aunt. Bet it's juicy. Scar misunderstanding, parents mistaking your surgical scars for a cult symbol? That's a wild leap. The dad doubling down after seeing your medical card is just him auditioning for most stubborn fool of the year. Your mock customer service voice was the perfect way to shut it down. These tales are proof entitled folks can turn a trip to the store or hospital into a full-on circus. Your quick wit and cool-headedness are goals. Keep slaying those Karens. Got more stories to spill? I'm ready for the next episode. That, my friends, brings us to the end of another Entitled People episode. If you enjoyed today's stories, please hit the thumbs up button. If you missed the last episode of Entitled People, check it out if you haven't. I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you.